Okay, so this lesson should be pretty short. This lesson is all about what is density. So, golly, that's not boxed well. Okay, so density, this is my very rough definition, is how much stuff is packed into a certain space. So, for instance, there's two different types of density I think that you deal with pretty regularly. So one of them is population density. And if we look at this map right here, population density talks about how many people are in a certain area. So for instance, if you look here, places like China and India, and lots of these places in Europe are very dense in terms of population. There are a lot of people that live there in a very small space. You can even see this is, I know I'm aware that the quality here is not great, but like even in America, you can see, for instance, that in New York City, right, in these areas, there's very dense population, whereas in Canada and in Alaska, people are more spread out, right? It might be a really long way that you have to drive or go to see another person. So that's our concept of population density. And so when we relate that back to my general definition, population density is how much stuff, that's the number of people per, which is going to mean divided by, so you can call this per or divided by the amount of land, which is the space aspect. Okay, there is also this concept of density that we talk about, or that you see in science, and I'm sure you all have come across this before. So in this instance, you're talking about which one of these spaces is more densely packed. So you might notice here that B is very densely packed. There's a lot of stuff in this cube, right? B is more densely packed than A. Or you might notice that, well, A and C have the same amount, right? They both have 5 things in them, but A is more densely packed than C because the space in C is bigger, where the space in A is not as large, all right? So when we're talking about matter density, we're usually talking about the weight or the mass, I should probably say mass, the mass per or divided by, so this is me saying the same thing, per or divided by, the volume, because we're talking about the amount of things inside the space, which in this case is going to be measured in volume. So let's look at 2 examples. So these are the first 2 problems off of each of your assignments, each of your practice worksheets. So I want you to make sure that you're writing this down as I'm showing you, because that's how you're going to need to write your assignment down. So the first thing I'm going to do is, I know I'm talking about population density. I'm going to list that I'm talking about China, because this worksheet's going to talk about a few different places. All right, so the question is, what's the population density? And they even tell you in the answers, it is people per square mile, and per means division. So I'm just going to do people. I'm going to do the population divided by the area, because area is square miles. So the population is 1,321,851,888 divided by 5,007,951.62 miles squared. And what will be very helpful for you is if you write out these units, because your answer needs to have units in it. So we're going to divide those 2 numbers. And so in this instance, I get that the population density in China is 228. And this says 0.095. And I think this, since we're talking about people, it probably makes sense to just leave that as a whole number. So I'm just going to leave that like that. People, and you have to use units for this to make sense, per square mile. So that means if you looked at a map and you had, you picked out just a random square mile, which is a square that you draw with 1 mile on any side, in China, if you did that, you would expect to find roughly 228 people in there on average. Okay, so this one is a question, this is off of the matter density worksheet. So in this question, I'm talking about a wooden block. So wooden block. That's what I'm going to write on my paper, question 1. And I know I'm looking at density here. And because this is matter, I'm going to be doing mass divided by volume. So it says the mass is 562 grams divided by 72 cubic meters. So I'm going to divide that out. And when I did that, I got 7.805 repeating. So I'm going to round that to 7.8. So this means my density is 7.8 grams per cubic meter. And so what that means, just so that you can get a visual, is that in this wooden block, cubic meter means it's a cube, right? It looks like this. And it would be, because it's a cubic meter, it's 1 meter in every dimension, which is like a meter stick is, remember that big like yardstick kind of thing? It's about that size. So you're looking at this big block, and this block itself would have a mass of 7.6 grams. Which is kind of like a weight. So that's what we're talking about when we're talking about density, okay? Make sure that the answers that you provide on the worksheet kind of mirror this as far as how you have them written up, and you should be good to go.